Good evening. It is Monday, April 1st, 2024. Welcome to episode 57 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. On tonight's broadcast, we'll be covering some news from around the homestead, a question and answer segment, the weekly poll with some country music legends. Did you know? And the main topic of the evening is a rush to judgment. So how are you this evening, Rebecca?
I am doing great.
Yeah.
I enjoyed having our grandkids for Easter, and our youngest, well, he's not our youngest grandson, but yeah, he is our youngest grandson. No, he's not. I take that back. Anyway,
we got too many.
We got too many. Can't keep track of them. So
anyhow,
he's almost 3. He's 2.5. I kind of introduced him to a piggy bank, and it's amazing how fast he learned the word money.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
How are you?
Good. Yeah, doing good. Yeah.
Got your run in?
I did. I got a run in today, which has been something that I haven't been able to do because we've both been sick, but we're both on the mend and getting better. So I'm kind of excited about that and trying to work back into the routine of doing the things that we normally do as far as from a health standpoint. So the weather's been just awesome. It's obviously April Fool's Day today, and we don't have any April Fools or anything like that. But man, we are now entering our 4th month of the year. It just seems like things are just like moving right along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really does. And again, I'm always thinking about the things that have gotten done thus far, but just the things that I still need to get done. And I'm making a lot of progress around here. I'm really excited about it. And just like a week or so ago, we had a lot of dry weather, and I had to actually turn on the sprinklers because things were starting to dry out. The lawns were drying out, the trees were starting to dry, but winter came back here a couple of days ago with a vengeance and just dumped on us, it's like absolutely fabulous around here because we don't have grass like a lot of other folks do in other states. We don't get summer rains. So once it starts to dry up around here, around May is typically when we see the last of our rain. It gets dry around here in the summertime, and that's,
hot.
Super hot. Yeah, super hot.
I'm really excited because our grandkids have been asking for a slide. Our slide is just old and crusty for the pool.
Yeah.
And I ordered it and it came fast.
Yeah.
It really came fast. So I'm really excited to get it installed.
Yeah, it'll be good, man. The summer is going to be, right around the corner, but I'm not really looking to rush into that just yet because I'm not ready for things to be 115 around here like it gets sometimes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about installing the slide.
Well, that's another project that, whatever. It's just another one of those deals.
So what you're telling me is I might have to figure out how to do it myself?
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. Excuse me. Yeah, I've been really focused on this fence project. It seems to me like it's been going on forever, but I would rather take my time to line everything out and not be impatient with the build. It's been a very tedious process, but it is going to be so worth it. I think I'll actually be finishing up pulling all my wire tomorrow, and I will have that area closed in 100% by the weekend. And I'm pretty excited about that. So all I have to do like tomorrow is just stretch the wire, and then I'm going to be hanging some gates within the next couple of days. And it's really important that I get that done because the trees right now that I've planted, all the trees that I put into this new orchard area, they're really vulnerable right now because all of their foliage is pushing out, and they're small trees. So they're down at deer browse height. And if I were to have deer come in right now and start snacking on those, it would set me back at least a year, if not more. And so I'm really trying to do all that I can do to sew this up, and so I can move on to bigger and better things. But one of the things that I've done to try to discourage any browse from deer is I've used some bone sauce, which I believe it's actually a pretty solid deterrent. I got some from Permapasture's farm a couple of years ago. I got some from Billy, and I've been using that on my stuff. I think it's a pretty good way to go if you're not planning on fencing something in. But in my opinion, I don't think that it's going to like 100% deter deer from coming in and doing some damage if they really were persistent about it. So I have used it sparingly out here until I can get things completely, sealed up. But I think really the only best way to keep animals from coming in and just doing what animals do is to actually fence the area in. And so that's why I'm very much decided to invest in that. And as far as investing, I would say one piece of advice I would give people is, spend the money to buy the best material you can within your budget. And I know that materials out there right now are really expensive. When you start pricing out materials, you start pricing anything out, inflation has really had an impact on a lot of things, and materials are, they haven't been spared that. So try to spend the most money you can, or not the most money, but get the best quality stuff, that fits within your budget. Because years later, if you plan on being in your property for any length of time, you won't regret it. You're going to be able to put a better stretch on the wire. You're going to be able to, years from now, go back and repair wire that's not going to need to necessarily just be replaced. You'll actually have something there that you can work with. I've put stuff in 20 plus years ago around here, and that fence is still just like solid, but it was solid material when I bought it. And so it's just a good thing to do, because I see a lot of people putting in fence around. And to me, I'm looking at that going, that'll probably work, dude, but it's you probably are going to regret that if you happen to stay there for any length of time, because your fence is it's that cheap Chinese or Japanese wire or whatever. But get something that's quality is what I'm trying to get across here.
I think we've talked about our neighbor at the beginning of our road who put fruit trees in, and there's no fencing around them.
Oh yeah. Dude, right up to and there's a lot of deer in that area too. And I'm actually probably going to stop in one day if I see him and just, admire his trees. And hey man, you've got some nice stuff here, man. I really like it. And one thing you might want to consider, because he's going to get smoked. I guarantee you. I saw him putting in these trees, and he put in some nice trees, probably a dozen or so. And I saw him out there with his wife and, his little baby, and they're putting in the trees. And I thought, oh, he's doing the thing, but he probably doesn't know. As soon as those things start to push out and the things start to dry out around here, that's going to be prime picking. So you're going to have to do something for that. But let me say hi to a few folks. We got some folks in the chat. Good evening, London. How are you, man? It's good to see you tonight. Sylvia Gibson, how are you? Skanes girl. Hey. Glad to see y'all.
Hello to all.
Yeah, deer like comfrey for sure. I guess it's not a problem depending on, where you've planted it and what, your intended purpose is for it. But they definitely like that. A lot of stuff likes comfrey. Chickens love comfrey, sheep, cows, everything likes to eat that stuff. So, for sure. Hogs 14, man, how are you doing? Yeah, far Northern California. Yeah, it seems like the farther you go Northern California, farther you go, the better it is, quite honestly. Up there in the Lassen Modoc area, that's pretty solid ground. Yeah, good people up there. Let me see where I'm at here. I put out a live birth video from a sheep that we had here, and it got tagged with a monetization restriction right away. And, YouTube does that for whatever reason. I think something in the script or something in the thumbnail or something was seen that made it so that it wasn't advertiser friendly. So I guess they feel as though showing things like that isn't something that's going to be well received by the advertisers or what have you. So it had that monetization restriction put on it. And I don't really care about that, quite honestly. I put out videos like that because I think people will benefit from it, those who have never seen such a thing. And so I try to put out videos like that for that reason. And it's not really for the, hey, I'm going to make money on this or, whatever. It's going to be this great video. It's just something that I think people, have benefited or can benefit from. So that's why I put it out. But we also had another sheep that I didn't even know she was bred because she's so small. She's a small dorper. And I didn't even know she was bred. And all of a sudden I looked at her and I said, man, she looks like her bag's starting to spring. And then she was getting a little loose in the back. And then like in 2 days, she was lambing out, and she pushed it out and the thing was alive. It was like the size of a football.
And strong. Amazing how strong it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was not thinking she was going to have anything that was in her that was viable, but she did a really good job. And I will say that these animals that I've had here, these sheep, they've kind of been more or less kind of an experiment in a sense, because I haven't put a lot of groceries into them. And that was the intent, was to try to see what I could have here on the property that would sustain these animals. And so they haven't been getting store-bought feed and all this other stuff. They've been getting pasture here, whether it's green or whether it's brown. That's what they've been getting, plus fodder, plus any type of, produce and stuff we get from any of our connections. They'll eat bread and all kinds of stuff, man. So yeah, they've done well.
That's when I'm not sneaking them carrots.
Yeah, she likes to feed them treats or what have you. But yeah, so we had another sheep born here on the property, and it's kind of getting to that point in the year where we're going to be putting some things in the garden beds. I'm going to be sowing some more carrots and beets, even though I've got carrots and beets out here right now that are about ready to come out for harvest, because they were sown this winter and, as a winter vegetable. And so we're harvesting carrots right now as we speak, but I've got a bed full of carrots out there, but I'm going to be sowing more of that sort of thing, so that we'll have that going into summer, because that's actually one thing that I really enjoy is beets. She pickles beets, the ones that I grow, and I have those every night in my salad. We never run out of pickled beets, right?
And I think they smell like dirt.
Yeah, she doesn't eat them. So it's perfect for me because I get all the beets, right?
Well, we go through them, so it's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I'll be planting those, and I've actually got another experiment that I'm working on right now too. I may make some content on it. Just depends on how it goes, but some seeds that I scarified and cold stratified and stuff like that. And so I'm going to potentially do a video kind of comparing that which I did that to, and then that which was completely natural. So I want to kind of see what the results of that's going to be. And I probably will be creating some content on that. But yeah, it's planting season, man. I'm stoked with this weather. I'm like really fired up about it. Let's see what else we got going on here. I don't know if you guys out there, if you have any problems with house sparrows. That's something that we have here a lot on our property, and it's a real problem for me. And if you're planting anything and it's young and tender, they're going to come in and they just peck at it. They're just these little damn sparrows. They're called house sparrows, and they're somewhat of an invasive species that were brought here in the early part of the last century. And they came over with like 50 of them from Europe somewhere. And then they've since become the most prolific songbird / invasive species, but they thrive around people's houses. That's why they're called house sparrows. And they'll eat all your bird seed and all your seeds and all this other stuff. Some people really love them or whatever, if they're, not trying to grow something and they just want to bird watch. But if you're trying to grow small stuff, particularly like brassicas, they love brassicas. They'll just skeletonize your chard and your broccoli and your, all these different types of leafy vegetables. They'll come in and just nuke them. Daikon radish, all those sort of things. If you don't plant an overabundance of that sort of thing, they're going to come in and just wipe you out. And so you need to try to find a way to navigate around that as well. And so I've come up with some netting options for when I'm, trying to plant carrots and beets and stuff in my beds. But yeah, they're a real pain, a real pest. And I don't know if that's something that y'all deal with in other places around either this state or, elsewhere in the country, but they say they're in all 50 states. And what they actually will do is they'll kick native birds like bluebirds and cardinals and all kinds of just different cool birds that you want to have around your property. They'll kick their babies out of the nest. They'll kill them and they'll kick out the eggs and they'll take over their nests and lay in there and stuff. But yeah, I got no love for them. So let's see here. Yeah, pickled beets are what's up, Skeins girl.
I don't mind pickling them as long as I don't have to eat them.
Yeah, they're super good. Let's see here. Have you ever tried a 55-gallon metal drum for biochar? And I'm assuming you're referring to kind of maybe like a horizontal, like a pit type of a deal, not like a vertical, like I have standing up retort system, but rather just maybe a half barrel or something like that is what I'm guess you're referring to. I'm not certain. You would have to specify more on that, but there's a lot of different designs out there for biochar, that people have come up with. And let's see here. You planted potatoes today. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. It's definitely time to get them in for sure. I planted mine a while ago, and the thing about potatoes, it's cool. You can plant them earlier. And then if your soil is able to be worked, obviously, if you live in a place where your soil's frozen, it's not really such a great idea. But when you can work your soil, like in an area that I have, you can put them in the ground early. And then when it's time for them to wake up, they'll just wake up. And so I've got ones out there now that are starting to push out their foliage and stuff. And I planted 120 potatoes and 60 in each bed. So I got 2 beds of potatoes, which is going to be more than enough for us if I get a good yield, which I'm anticipating. But yeah, that's a really cool thing about potatoes, is to get them in, but you don't want to wait too late on them. But yeah, that's awesome. Awesome, Skeins. Did you get those from, are those just your own seed potato, or did you get those from someplace, some seed potato somewhere? You can get some really good places. You can get some good organic seed potato. And then once you have it, you kind of have your own stock. That's one really nice thing about potatoes is, you can just kind of keep being self-reliant or self-sufficient on that sort of thing. That plus garlic is the same way. Once you have your own garlic stash, you should be pretty good for a while. Let's see here. It's probably a sparrow I have nesting on top of the doghouse on the carport. Yeah, look that up. Look up house sparrow, and then there's a male and a female, and you can tell easily which one is which. But once you look up a house sparrow and go, oh yeah, I've seen those birds. I bet you have those around your place. And yeah, they're a pain in the ass, man. I mean, for me, I if I wasn't growing stuff or whatever, I'd be like probably cool with them. But when you try to plant something and they just come in and eat it all, it's very frustrating. Let's see here. London. Oh, Dean Mullis, how are you, man? Good to see you.
Good evening.
Let's see where we at here. Oh yeah, and we will be processing a steer this month, which is super good because we are all out of our beef from the last steer that we processed. And beef prices have been through the roof, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys if you've done any shopping for beef or looking at prices. And actually on the hoof prices are really good, man. I wish I had like 25 to take to the auction or something, because I mean they're just like making bank with these beef right now. It's like crazy, the prices. But we've scaled back to the point where we don't even have any cows. We've got one steer who was raised from our genetics. He was raised from our herd that we had at the time, but we've sold all of those just because of feed costs,
Except for my favorite, but she's old.
Yeah. We've got the goat here. We call her the goat. And it's not because she's the greatest of all time, although she is the greatest of all time, kind of. in our book. She was called the goat because she looked like a goat. She was that small.
She was dwarfed when she was
Yeah.
born.
And I wanted to get rid of her, and she talked me into keeping her, and the kids wound up showing her, and she was a, one of their little show, females and stuff. And she's been the best cow I've ever had, and that's saying a lot. And she's the only cow that I'll ever allow to die on this property. And that's saying a lot.
A lot.
Yeah. So I got to give her that amount of respect, because she's just been a great cow. She just has. And so she's out there now. She don't look great. This isn't going to probably be too many more years for her, but she'll have that. We'll bury her here. So, but anyhow, this steer is one that we raised. He actually was abandoned by his mother. His mother was a terrible mother, and we wound up getting rid of her. But it just so happened we had another cow who had a calf that died the week before, and she readily adopted this little dude, even though her mom walked away from her. And I sent her ass to the auction.
But this is the grandmother of that calf.
Yeah. And she just like, oh, hey, there's my baby, because hers just died a week ago or whatever. And so she adopted this calf and raised it. And we're gonna process him, but he's gonna be 25 months at the time of processing. It's gonna be, for us, it's gonna be cheaper than what we could buy anywhere else, but that's only because we didn't have to go out and buy this animal. It's an animal we already had. And then, we do pretty well as far as how we source our feed. And this steer was started on feed. We started him on grain in November. And in my opinion, that is the best way to do it. You can grain feed an animal out. Typically, animals are fed out anywhere from 60 to 90 days. Feedlots do about that range, more than 60, but like 90 to 120 days feedlots. But when you do it over a longer period of time, you can take an animal that doesn't necessarily have the highest marbling quality in that animal, and you can marble them quite well if you space it out and you don't try to cram it all into them at once. You kind of space it out over time. And so I just think you get a better end product with better marbling, which leads to better palatability. It's going to be easier, better chewing, better flavor, in my opinion. And the steer is going to be, this one will be 25 months, whereas most steers that are raised in like a feedlot are going to be anywhere from like 15 to 19 months is where they'll process them. And if you're going to grass feed an animal, if you're going to grass feed like a steer, that takes longer because they're only on grass. So you're going to have to feed them from 24 months to roughly 30 months. So we're talking a 2-year-old animal. It's not like raising chickens, right? Where you're like 9 weeks in and you're like, hey, we're going to butcher our chicken. No, it takes a little bit of time to get a steak. And so this dude's going to wind up actually being 25 months old, but he will have been on grain for 5 months. I started graining him in November, and we're going to pour about 1,200 pounds of grain into him. And that's going to cost us about $280. So that's very, very cost effective. You're not going to go to Tractor Supply and feed an animal out with, for 1,200 pounds of feed for $280. So, and we've got about another $300 into them for alfalfa. And that's only because we hadn't sourced our alfalfa. We're not buying it by the ton anymore. We used to buy like a half a load or a load, a tractor trailer. And then we'd, it was the better way to go. But I mean, the cost of that anymore is just like through the roof too. But
we don't have enough animals to buy that much hay.
No, not at all.
Or alfalfa.
Not at all. And then again, I've been trying to like not buy as much feed and just feed what I've got here. So that's kind of the thing. But we're just going to, we're just processing this dude here. Probably, I think you got him scheduled for the 15th of April. So that will be super good. And the only other cost we're going to have, which is actually not insignificant, it's the processing cost, because we don't, we're not set up to kill and butcher and cut and wrap, an animal that's going to be 1,200 pounds. So we're going to have somebody come in, kill them, and then haul them off to the butcher and cut and wrap for us. And that's like, again, it's not cheap to have that done. So, but anyhow, this is going to be one fantastic. There's just no way. There's just no substitute for raising your own meat in this way, because you get to determine how that animal's fed out. And if you do it right, there's nothing like it, you know. Even the hamburger, man.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You're never going to want to go back to store-bought hamburger.
Yeah, you think you're getting something in the store. I mean, that stuff tastes terrible. It's like you're eating like a wet sock. Seriously, there's no flavor to it. But you know, a good fed animal, or if you go to like a really great steakhouse and where they're going to charge you like $70 for a steak, you know, or whatever, then you're like, oh, this is really good meat. Well, you can get that if you grow it yourself, but you just got to know how to do it and be patient, you know. I think I'm going to get to some Q&A here. That's about what's going on in the homestead, other than the fact she's, you know, working on canning chickens and stuff like that, because we do the Costco rotisserie chickens and she strips them out and then cans them and stuff. And that's how we process chicken. We don't raise meat birds here, just because of again, it's not as cost effective, because you're not going to find cheaper meat than going and getting a Costco rotisserie chicken for $4.99. And those are actually some pretty decent little
They're
birds.
pretty big birds.
You know, and it's all cooked. It's all seasoned. You don't have to do anything with it other than just strip it off the bone and, you know, either make it into some pot pies and freeze it, or, you know, can it as she does. And then we'll have chicken for the whole year.
Can it and then save all the bones and the skin and everything and make some stock from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get right to Q&A here. I got 3 questions. This one here is from JJD903. And this was on a biochar inoculating video. And he was asking the question, he said, isn't it preferable for biochar to soak with compost tea instead of plain water? And the reason why he was saying that is because I was basically soaking compost tea into a livestock watering trough, basically to reduce the hydrophobic properties and then make it so that it's not as dusty when I was crushing it. And so he had that question, and I said, in theory, yes, but untreated char is hydrophobic, meaning it repels water. And water helps to break that down. I could have crushed it dry, but I crushed it wet to keep the dust down. Char can literally take weeks to become completely saturated. Once it becomes completely filled with water, char will sink. Most, if not all, of the 3/8" size char used in this run was still buoyant when I put it in the tea, indicating to me there was still more room for absorption. By treating with water first, it better prepares the char to receive inoculation by advancing the first step. Thanks for the question, and I hope that makes sense. And so, you know, char is buoyant, but after it's had an opportunity to sit in the water, all of those pores will fill up with water, thereby making it so that it's like a heavier than water, and it will sink to the bottom. It's going to take some time to do that, though. And so that's what I've experimented with and learned in doing that. And so he was basically saying that maybe I should have put it in dry, thinking that, you know, it was already filled up because it was wet and all of that sort of thing. But I was trying to explain, and I hope I was able to get that across, is that, you know, it takes a long time. So let's see, I had another question. Let me see here. Hold on a second. Okay. The next question says, how do you get a constant? He was talking about, it was a short that I did just showing a compost thermometer in compost. Basically, it was around 140 degrees or so, which is, you know, pretty warm. And he says, how do you get it to a constant temp like that? Do you have a heating element under the pile? Really interesting stuff. And I just said that heat's generated as microorganisms break down and feed upon the organic matter. There are a number of factors that need to be present in order for a pile to heat up sufficiently. These include proper moisture, availability of oxygen, a carbon to nitrogen ratio around 30:1, meaning 30 parts carbon, 1 part nitrogen, and some form of insulation. And that's really what, needs to be present for compost to actively heat up in that thermophilic range. And the first thing is it's moisture. That's really the first thing, because what you can actually do is take 2 piles of wood chips, have one dry and one wet, and the one that's wet will break down at a higher rate than the one that's dry. This one will probably not break down, the dry one, but the wet one over time will start to decompose. It's not going to decompose in a hot fashion, but what's happening is that water is breaking down the cellulose and the lignin in the wood itself, in that carbon, and it's starting to draw in microorganisms that are going to begin to feed upon that and to start to decompose it. But they're not going to be active enough to actually make it hot. But that's the first element that you need in order for decomposition to occur, because it's going to happen by that microbiology. And life, everything that's living needs water. It's very important. So that's the first element that you need. Now, if you take and you add nitrogen to that carbon, it's going to only accelerate that. And again, ratios, I don't really get too nerdy about that. I go with somewhere around 50-50. So I'll put like a wheelbarrow of this, wheelbarrow of that, right? Greens, throw some browns in there. And, if you have those two elements working together, they're going to accelerate. And it's just like atoms or molecules that are moving around in some place that's closed. They're bumping into each other. And it's kind of the same concept there. So you've got all that microorganisms just actively working, and that's what generates that heat. And what's also necessary is you need to have oxygen. So if it were to be completely saturated or be completely devoid of oxygen, you're going to have a condition that's anaerobic, and that's not going to promote the activity of those microorganisms. And then you also need to provide some form of insulation to that. So that's one of the reasons why piles should be somewhere around 1 cubic yard to 3 cubic yards. And really that's just because the outer covering is the thing that's providing the insulation. That's why you need to actually turn, after a few days, temperature starts to drop, then you're going to take that outer covering and put it on the inside of the pile. So it's just those 4 things is what's going to generate that. And it's not, as this person was saying, he thought it was maybe a heat mat or something, but people just don't know. And so I thank him for that question. What else do we got here? Oh, okay, here's the last question. Person is asking, his name is Gregorio Smith 6994. And this was on another video that I had done where I was comparing biochar that I had made with store-bought lump charcoal. And, for whatever reason, he said, his comment was just said, all that ash, you can spread all the ash from barbecues or fireplaces on the garden or field or farm. It contains potassium. And I just responded to this person because I think there's a lot of people that might have this understanding, and it's a false understanding. If you think that, hey, I can just throw this stuff out there without any real consequence other than, hey, it's just going to do all this great stuff to my plants and my soil. I said this can be a good idea, but it also depends on your soil pH. Using wood ash can be useful in soil that is acidic, but it can have a negative effect in soil that is neutral to alkaline. Wood ash has many micro and macronutrients, with calcium being the most prevalent, followed by potassium, and then some of the other elements, are in lesser value. But I said it's a good recommendation to have your soil tested before using it as a soil amendment, or if you are going to use it at all, just use it sparingly, because it's basic. It's essentially all it is. Essentially all that ash is it's the remnants from the carbon that was burned, and what you have in there is all of those minerals. That's what it is. There's a lot of minerals in there, but then there's also a lot of other compounds that are basic in nature, meaning they are alkaline. So they're going to be the higher scale, or the higher end of the pH scale. And that can be like a problem if you think, oh, I'm going to put this in my garden beds and grow carrots and potatoes and all this stuff, and you just put a bunch of this stuff in there. Yeah, it's going to put minerals in there, but it's going to change the soil pH, and that's going to not be very happy for the plants that you're trying to grow. So the best thing you can possibly do before you do that is kind of find out what your pH is. Now, if you have soil that's acidic, that might be something you want to use. So that's all I had on that. We were going to jump right into Did You Know? And Miss Rebecca has the Did You Know for this evening. And what do you have?
So did you know, on our $20 bill, I'm sure you know it's Andrew Jackson, that he hugely opposed paper money. In his farewell address on March 4th in 1837, he stated, "The paper system being founded as public confidence and having of itself no intrinsic value, it is liable for great and sudden influctuation, thereby rendering property insecure and the wage of labor unsteady and uncertain." Pretty smart guy for 1837.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I was unaware of that. But yeah, that's some visionary stuff right there. And yeah, it makes you wonder why we don't have somebody now that has that sort of wisdom that would be willing to tell the people those sort of things, right? They clearly have to know all of the things that you said. That Andrew Jackson?
Andrew Jackson
In 1837 said that. Yeah, that's incredible, man. I did not know that, but yeah, thanks for that. Huh. Yeah.
Because we no longer have anything that backs our money.
No.
Where before we had gold and silver.
Yeah.
But yeah. So our money is literally nothing.
Well, I think we can all know that, but it's amazing to think that the people that founded this country knew those things, and they were willing to say those things publicly. Yeah. Just like Eisenhower with his farewell address, talking about the military industrial complex and all those sort of things that are clearly evident today. But there's just a lack of wisdom in the people that are our leadership. It's an incredible thing, man, when you really think about it. Let's see. Dakota Daisy says, you should make a short on YouTube. Make that a short. And I'm assuming you're talking about the Did You Know? But that's an interesting thing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. I like that. Well, not that I like the fact that our money is shit. That's not the part that I like. I like what he had to say. He knows what he's talking about.
I mean, it's just wise beyond his years.
Yeah. So, hey, I did this poll last week, and I had 145 people that responded to it. And it was a question asking if you had only one concert to go to, I guess, which of these legendary performers would you like to go see? And so out of the 145 respondents that we had, and I had some folks that actually, said other things too, some people chimed in. They wanted Bob Marley, and they wanted, other people, and Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash and stuff like that. That wasn't a part of the poll, but I appreciate the effort. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Maybe you should put none of the above or something.
Well, the problem is I wish they would give you 5 choices like they do, but when you do the picture poll, it only gives you 4 choices, and if you just do a text poll, it'll give you 5 choices. So the results were coming in the first spot, which this actually kind of surprised me. This is somebody that I've seen before, so he wouldn't have been somebody I would have chose, even though he put on a pretty good show and stuff. But Merle Haggard came in at 41%. Coming in second was George Strait. Coming in third was George Jones, the possum. And bringing up the rear, last but not least, was Conway Twitty. And yeah, it's interesting. Who would you choose, Rebecca, if it were one of these legendary performers? What would be your choice out of
I
this
would
stuff?
choose George Strait, and I actually voted in your poll.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay, cool. So George Strait, yeah. Why would you choose George Strait?
I think he sounded amazing younger, and we've watched some videos of him now, and he still sounds amazing.
Yeah, he's actually incredible, man. I saw some TikTok videos with him when he was like, I mean, these are recent videos. And I was like, dude, he looks freaking great for his age. He still looks like a dude, man, like a solid, good-looking man, right? And he sings like the same. I was like, holy smokes. Mm-hmm. This guy is still holding it together, and he sounds just like, like he did back in the day. And so that would actually be my choice too, would be George Strait. And I thought I would add this part to this poll just so people would know. But it's interesting as far as the number one hits that these guys have had. Number one singles on the United States Billboard chart. And we'll start at the bottom, which this kind of surprised me. But he was at the bottom because he had a lot of success as a duet, and he had some number ones as a duet. But coming in on the bottom was George Jones with only 13 number one hits. Coming in second from the bottom was Merle Haggard with 38, followed by Conway Twitty, who had 55 number one singles. Conway Twitty he was badass. That guy, I love so much of that guy's. He would probably be my second choice out of this group, quite honestly. He's awesome. But he had 55, and topping the list was George Strait with 60 number one singles on the US Billboard chart. Yeah, he's legendary, man. That guy is so cool.
Now, we also watched some video with George Strait, and he was performing with Alan Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Who is another person that at his age still sounds amazing.
Yeah.
He's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but he's not,
them together.
He's not as old as those other dudes though. But yeah, we saw him as well. We've seen him perform, good stuff. I was going to put, what I was going to put in this poll, guys? I was going to put Garth Brooks. Only because he's been like kind of ostracized because he's come out saying some woke bullshit.
Been a little outspoken about some stuff.
Yeah. So I was going to put him in. That's why I was hoping they had a fifth choice, to see what people would have said if they would have voted for him. Because back in the day, he was kind of the thing for a minute. We actually saw Garth Brooks in the 90s when he was doing his No Fences tour. And this is before he really blew up, It
was a pretty small bar that we saw him in.
Yeah, we saw him at the Saddle Rack in San Jose. It was like it no longer exists, but it was an actual cowboy bar in the Bay Area. It's called the Saddle Rack, and he came there to perform, and I got his tickets, and we went and saw him. And I mean, we're from 5 feet from the stage, and he's up there doing his thing, singing Friends in Low Places and jumping around the stage, and we're like, both of us are dancing, and it was a small thing, man. It was so cool. It was the coolest thing ever. And then the guy's like, after that, he's like playing stadiums, and he's this huge thing or whatever.
But in that, sorry about that. In that concert too, he said that all the women could come up and give him a hug, or I don't remember exactly how he stated it, but all the ladies were lining up and he'd give you a hug.
Did you line up?
I didn't. I was with you.
Good answer. Yeah, no, it was cool. Right on. Hey, I'm going to get to the main topic of the evening. The main topic is a rush to judgment. And, the first time I heard that, the rush to judgment, was during the OJ trial. And I think I thought that's where the phrase actually came from, because that's what his defense attorneys, they used it. Johnny Cochran, he was up there, rush to judgment, and if the glove doesn't fit and all this other stuff.
Must quit.
Right. And I thought it was, just so that you shouldn't presuppose the guilt or innocence of a person, their client, in essence. But the phrase rush to judgment actually comes from a book that was written in 1966, questioning the findings of the Warren Commission, which, if you don't know, that was officially known as the President's Commission on the Assassination of President Kennedy. And the book Rush to Judgment was very critical of the findings of this commission, which caused a lot of people in the public to call into question the conclusions of their findings. And I think the phrase has a lot of relevance for things that have happened in the past, as well as for the present day. Take for example, the latest news from this past week, whereas the feds raided the homes of rapper / music producer P. Diddy. And now I will say right up front, I'm not really a fan of this guy. And I think he's probably a scumbag, but being a scumbag by itself is not a reason to assess somebody's guilt or innocence. Is it?
Right. I'm sorry. I was reading. I wasn't paying attention. I have to be honest.
Well,
say it again.
Well, is that a reason to jump to conclusions? If somebody's a scumbag, do we automatically?
You shouldn't. In my opinion, I don't think. Yeah. Unless you know the facts.
Okay.
I mean.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think, also too, though, we shouldn't avoid our gut instincts. We should listen to those and use discernment. And, when we're assessing people, because I think a lot of times if you see somebody and they look sketchy or whatever, a lot of times they're sketchy. If it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, sometimes it's actually a duck. And it's okay to make those assumptions, but that doesn't eliminate the need for everybody to have their day in court, and being presumed innocent until proven otherwise. A lot of what we've seen out there from the punditry or people on social media, they're convicting somebody before they've had their day in court. And I don't know if that's really the way that I should be acting, even though it's kind of hard not to sometimes. Apparently this investigation they're talking about surrounds, human trafficking and stuff like that, which nobody's in favor of that. And so whenever you hear that sort of thing, you're kind of recoil at it. And so, yeah, I mean, he's probably involved in a lot of other things, illicit drug activities and all of that sort of thing. I think it's completely plausible, given his lifestyle and his connections, that it could be somewhat justified and warranted. But anytime there's this sort of public display of force by the government, it has me questioning the motivations of the government, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. Let us not forget, not too long ago, the feds raided the home of the former president of the United States. And I think most people would see this as a problem, or not see this as really a problem, if the hands of justice weren't tipping the scales, or if that was applied equally to both sides of the political spectrum. But I think it's pretty clear that there's political motivations and it's not being applied equally to both sides. So, people in power have a history of abusing power. And I think it's just something we should never forget, nor should we really rush to judgment based on thin allegations.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting that let me see what London has to say. Yeah. London says it's human nature to rush to judgment, especially these days with social media so strong in our lives. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, I think social media definitely helps sway people to go one direction.
Right. But see, we saw this back when OJ was being televised, and it became a spectator sport for so many of us. I know I was enthralled by it because I remember that quite vividly. That was an amazing thing, man, watching OJ, the Bronco, and the cut hand, and he's fleeing to Chicago and the whole thing. And then we get to watch the whole trial play out on TV. That was like the start of our voyeurism into rooting for, oh, hey, what's going on, and then the verdict comes and people are like, the hell? How did that happen? I mean, he was acquitted, but I don't think too many people think that justice was served in that case. But yeah, I think the media has a lot of sway on our ability to look at this like a spectator sport.
Didn't the glove kind of play a huge part in that?
Well, it did, because it was soaked in OJ's and the killer's blood,
and anybody knows that
it's going to shrink.
It's going to shrink and tighten up.
Yeah, but anyhow, I agree, Hogs, man. It's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but a lot of times it is kind of backwards. Yeah, OJ definitely changed things, man. It was a watershed moment in this country, I think, quite honestly. That and the Gulf War, both of those things were televised for our viewing pleasure. Schwarzkopf standing up there saying, "Oh, look at these Iraqis! Look at them! Look at them! They don't know it yet, but check this out! Fucking boom!" We're watching people just like get blown up on TV, and like, it's like, oh, hey, isn't this cool? Because, we were attacked in 9/11, and now we're going to go over there, regardless of whether or not we're getting the right people or not, somebody's going to fucking pay. And that's kind of like, I don't know, it's blood sport, man. But anyhow, I digress. Yeah, I think that this whole thing right now, it's interesting that it took place when it did, because recently, in the last week or so, Rebecca and I have been refreshing our memory and watching some documentary footage on the American tragedy that became known as Ruby Ridge. And for those that are not familiar with Ruby Ridge, it was a series of events revolving around a guy named Randy Weaver and his family. Basically, he had a wife and 4 children, and they moved from Iowa to a very northern part of Idaho, 30 miles south of the Canadian border, and decided to live there off-grid in a cabin in the early 80s. And they had like 8 acres, and they wanted to live off-grid. They lived there to, homeschool. And from the best that I could tell, there were pretty much people that just wanted to be left alone and live a happy life. And the problems for them actually began when a neighbor that Randy got into a property dispute with was taken to court, and the neighbor lost the case and was ordered to pay Randy like $2,100. As a result of that, the neighbor was pissed off, and he decided he was going to get revenge on Randy, and basically sent letters to the FBI, the Secret Service, and the county sheriff, which he alleged that Weaver threatened to kill Pope John Paul II, President Ronald Reagan, and the governor of Idaho. So that's what brought the Weavers basically into the consciousness of the authorities. And through a series of fabrications and misstep missteps by the authorities. This whole thing basically escalated in the early 90s and basically became known as Ruby Ridge. And it was this big siege and standoff, resulting in the deaths of Randy's wife, his son, the family dog, and a U.S. Marshal.
And almost his friend that lived with them, but they were able to.
Right. Yeah. It's actually a real tragedy, this thing. And it just it reminds me of the whole rush to judgment thing, you know, where there was this rush to judge this person. And we watched a video last week. It was from a channel that I'd never even heard of. And I don't even know, quite honestly, why this decided to pop up in my feed on YouTube. Maybe it was because the feds put it there and they wanted to like have me watch it, or maybe because of other things I've searched or whatever, but it just popped up in my feed and I go, oh, okay, let me check this out.
They can hear your thoughts.
Maybe so. Maybe so. But it was a channel called Windigoon. I'd never heard of it. And this dude has like 3.5 million subscribers. The video we watched, which was only put out like 3 weeks ago, has like 2.5 million views. And I think it's incredibly well done. It seeks to correct a lot of the misconceptions out there and clear up some of the confusion surrounding Ruby Ridge. The name of the video we watched was called Siege of Ruby Ridge, an American Standoff, Story and Controversy. And I encourage everybody who has an interest in learning more about Ruby Ridge, or maybe going and revisiting that to set the record straight about what took place, give this a listen. It's about 2 hours long, so it's going to take some time for you to get through it. And, you know, he talks a little bit about gun history for whatever reason. He kind of goes into this little tirade on gun history, which, you know, that isn't a bad thing or whatever. It's just, I fast forwarded it through it because it kind of took away from the flow of the story. So if you're into that, listen to that part of it or whatever, but just a little brief segment he does on gun history, which I thought was kind of misplaced, but
he does a pretty good job at staying neutral.
Yeah, I think he does. He injects some of his thoughts or whatever into there, and he points out the problems that existed as far as how this manifested itself from both sides. You know, both sides made some errors and mistakes, and he points that out. But I think it's a really good thing to go back and to listen to. So I have put a link in the description, in the show notes, for that particular video. I'm probably going to listen to it again just because it's a very immersive retelling of the events. And I think it would actually be a very good video for kids to see this sort of thing in school, you know, probably high school age type of a thing, right? But it would better inform them about the world around them, I think, in a lot of ways. They might become more aware of things like due process and search and seizure, and that not everything that you see and hear in the media is true, or at the very least get them to consider not rushing to judgment before knowing the facts. Because I think a lot of people did that with this particular family because of the profile that was created on them and the narrative that was pushed out into the media, you know. And one of the narratives that was created of this family, and I don't believe it to be true from what I've heard, but it has been widely reported during this incident that they were white supremacists or white separatists or whatever, which, let me say for the record, that if in fact they were any of those things, I don't particularly see it as being a problem, provided they don't impact anyone else with their beliefs. You know, so if you want to associate with who you want to
harm to
anyone,
which
as
far as I could tell, they weren't. They were just living their life off grid.
Yeah. If you want to associate with who you want to associate with and be around with who you want to be around, who is that a problem for?
It shouldn't be a problem.
Right. Yeah. That's my take on it. And again, like Rebecca was saying, if it's in some ways being directed or targeting some other person or races or whatever, or try to force those beliefs upon somebody that don't believe the same, then it's probably a problem. But if you want to be a separatist or a supremacist, be all of those things. It's a free country. And especially if a person's living up in the woods where they're not impacting anybody else, who's that a problem for? I don't know. I think that everything that I gather, the whole narrative that they created of this dude and his family was a fabrication. And I think, yeah, it's true that he went to some Aryan Nation meetings and stuff, but that was because he was drawn there, right?
Right. He was supposedly drawn there by undercover FBI agents. But from what I gathered is that they were able to live pretty well. And then occasionally they needed money. So he would,
that's why
he would do odd jobs to kind of bring in a little income for food for his family,
and that's why he kind of got into the guys like entrapped him saying, hey, would you saw off these shotguns for me? And this is a freaking Fed like saying, hey, would you do this for me? And he's like, yeah, I need some money. And so that's how this kind of thing happened or whatever. But
maybe you should, I don't know if people have seen this or not, but maybe you should give them a little background of what Aryan Nation is about.
Well, I mean, they're all about like their race, right? The Aryan race, the white race, whatever. And, racial purity and all that sort of stuff. And again, I don't give two shits, man, if people want to be like whatever they want to be, so long as it doesn't impact other people. If you're not using that to harm other people, who gives a shit if you're like thinking your race is superior? You can think whatever you want. Right. It's America, right? But
the feds chose to go after a single man and his family as opposed to.
Well, yeah, if they're doing something illegal within this group, which they would have known of that because they had informants in this group already that they drew him to this group. It wasn't like he's like, hey, I want to go be in the Aryan Nations. They invited his ass. And for whatever reason, he decided, yeah, that sounds cool. I'll go, whatever. And so they were already in the group. If they have a problem with the group, then, it's like, I don't know. But anyhow, yeah.
Throw you off?
No, you didn't throw me off. You didn't throw me off. Let's see. I'm going to check out some of these. Yeah. Waco, man, that was a wacky deal, dude. No pun intended. No Waco intended. Yeah, I don't know what I think about all that. I've watched some of that. I don't like how the government went about in the standoff portion of it. But there was definitely some wackiness going on in that Branch Davidian compound that was pretty way out, I guess. I don't know. I don't have all the answers to all of that, but I'm not really thrilled with how the government wound up basically, having that thing jump off, and it turned out to be this thing for 51 days that, it was kind of a bad deal. Another kind of tragic thing, but this is a totally different thing, man. These are people just wanted to be left alone.
Right.
And they were, here people are rushing to judge them when they don't really know the story of the whole thing. I think that what I would really strongly encourage people to do is to listen to a very powerful interview that was recently given. We both listened to it, and it was by the daughter, Sarah Weaver, who happened to be like 14 years old at the time when this happened. So it wasn't like she was a kid that didn't know what was going on. She was a young lady, And to hear her talk about her upbringing and what it was like, it was very average and idyllic, quite honestly. You know, she said it was great. She loved her upbringing, you know, being up there. And yeah, it was her and her brother and the family and her pony and or her horse or whatever. And
She said it was like an adventure.
yeah. I don't know. I think what's incredible about this interview, in my opinion, is to get the opportunity to hear about this Ruby Ridge from somebody who was actually on Ruby Ridge, right? And not some other party, and get a firsthand account of what took place. And I can't even hardly imagine, you know, what it must have been like. And I can't do it justice because what she displays in this interview is such like strength and grace and forgiveness and all of those sort of things. I don't personally think I would have had that level of forgiveness that she's displayed, at least not at this point in my life. Maybe at some point in my life, if things changed or whatever, but it's incredible to hear her in this interview. And she doesn't sound like somebody who's gone through this sort of thing, but you can hear she's still dealing with things, but she's very well adjusted. And like I say, it's incredible, incredible thing to listen to.
To me, it's amazing how adjusted she appears.
Yeah.
And how forgiving she is to the FBI and all of this that's been done to her family.
Yeah. The title of this interview is called "The Untold Story of Ruby Ridge" with survivor Sarah Weaver. And she hasn't done a lot of interviews from what I understand. And this one is actually pretty recent. And like, again, it was like a 2-hour thing, wasn't it? It was like 2 hours.
It was pretty lengthy.
Yeah. You know, and I mean, like I say, you just listen to it and you're just like, wow, man, you get a better perspective of this thing. And I think this isn't something we should try to forget. I think these are the events that we should try to remember so that they don't happen again. I think that's a really important thing to do. Mm-hmm. You know, I think, you know, when I listen to stuff like this, for me, it's very, very captivating. And it reminds me of one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Rambo, First Blood. I know that sounds like stupid, right? And it wasn't that the movie itself was like great from the standpoint of cinematography or the script of it or any of those sort of things. It was just a movie that caught me off guard. And I had no idea, no expectation. And when I saw it as a child. I was living at my folks' home. I was still a kid. I was probably, 14 or something like that, I guess. I don't know. And it was on network TV. And I just happened to like come in right as the thing was coming on. And like from the moment I laid eyes on that movie, I was sucked in, man. And the movie Rambo has so many similarities to me between Ruby Ridge and Rambo First Blood, because here you have somebody who just wants to be left alone. And yet you've got the authorities that are looking for trouble where trouble doesn't even really exist. You know, you had old Sylvester Stallone walking into town. He just wanted a place to eat. And the old fat sheriff, starts picking on him. And he doesn't realize he's picking on this dude that, he's like this war hardened, Green Beret or whatever. And they wind up having a bunch of shit happen. And it's very interesting if you think about it, because how the Weavers got out of this thing was from an like a military guy coming and talking to Randy. Bo Gritz, I think was his name. He was some, famous dude or whatever that was a Green Beret. And he basically talked to Randy and got him out of there. Just like in Rambo, they had the old general from his company had to come and, get him out of the woods, or whatever. So I don't know. It's just a very, very interesting thing. And Yeah, I don't know. I just think we shouldn't forget these sort of events, man, because they will be repeated, and that's the unfortunate part about them. You know?
Yeah, I would say probably out of the whole story, the luckiest is the baby, because the baby won't remember any of it.
Yeah, that's true, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is very true.
Because they actually had 3 kids when they moved there. And then while they lived there, the 4th one was born there.
Right. Gosh, what a tragedy, man. Like, it's just sad to think about it. You know, put yourself in that position. You're just wanting to get away from stuff. You just want to go live someplace where you're not being impacted. You want to kind of do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of fed up with how things are going on in society or whatever, and you just decide you're going to do this. And next thing you know, you're being like targeted. You're essentially being hunted on your own property in your own country by your own government. That's sad, man.
Which appears for no reason at all.
That's what it appears that's the reason. And the unfortunate part about it is that it shows the inefficiency of government, because they passed this incident off to 3 different agencies. It started with the U.S. Marshals, or the ATF, then it was the U.S. Marshals, then it was the FBI, and and they're just, stuff's being lost in translation, and mistakes are made, and all those sort of things. And it took a while for the truth to come out, and once it did, they wound up being exonerated and awarded a settlement. But I mean, there's no amount of money that can make that amount of pain go away.
Right.
Most people would give anything to have their mom back or their brother back, or that never having happened. So you can't buy your way out of something like this. And I don't know. It's just sad. It's just sad. Yeah, there's, I think, many cases throughout the world, and where there's a rush to judgment before the presumption of innocence. And sometimes this rush to judgment is purposely done, and they put on a display so that a message will be sent. I think that there was a recent such occurrence here in Russia. So why don't you guys take a look at this?
Last weekend, at least 140 people were killed in a shooting by ISIS-K terrorists at a Moscow music hall, marking the deadliest terrorist attack that Russia has seen in the last 20 years. The attackers were apprehended by Russian authorities while trying to escape the country, then were later displayed in glass enclosures at a courthouse with severely swollen faces. This happened at the same time as when various videos were circulating around social media, reportedly showing the attackers being tortured by Russian security agents. One video showed a suspect being forced to chew on his own ear that had been sliced off, while another attacker was stripped down and had wires connecting his genitals to a car battery. Another suspect was so badly beaten that he was rolled into court on a wheelchair and was barely conscious. Russian officials have urged for a severe punishment for all those involved in the attack, but have declined to comment on whether or not the suspects are being tortured.
Yeah, I don't know if those dudes will ever be seen again, quite honestly. What's your thoughts on that, Rebecca? Is that how we should be getting down when we have, let's say something like that happens here? Is that something we should do to send a message to people who have been accused of committing heinous crime?
I don't think that we should take people and make them an example and not know what it is that they did. I think you should first find out if the person is guilty, and guilty of what, to what degree.
Right. Yeah, I think, in this case, this is clearly, in my opinion, a rush to judgment. However, let's just say, it's different now. I think it's so much different now, because you can have a video of somebody shooting a place up, and how do you even believe the video when you can create a video that shows that?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if this was back in the day and you had like video evidence or something, yeah, I mean, it's a clear-cut case, but it's just a different world now, man. So how would you deal with this? And I think you're right, in my opinion. I think, it's not okay to rush to judgment and to convict somebody in this case. But what if they are given their day in court? Is this sort of treatment appropriate, in your opinion?
I kind of think that if they did something extremely heinous, then what's done to them, I mean, this may sound cruel, but they should experience the pain they have inflicted upon someone else.
Okay. Yeah, I say this would be, in my opinion, this would be 100% appropriate, and it probably wouldn't be appropriate enough, in my opinion, because think of all the lives that these people have affected. If in fact these are the people that shot up 137 people, I mean that's an incredible amount of devastation to an incredible amount of people, and I don't think any punishment isn't too severe, in my opinion. And I think they should be made a public example of, so that people know, hey, you fuck around, you're going to find out. But to do this to these dudes, man, before they've even been in the courtroom, man, that's some pretty KGB, man. Old Putin, man, he's pulling out some KGB tricks,
Right.
I don't think that dude's going to live, man. I don't think any of those guys are going to live. And if they do, they're going to wish they didn't live. Yeah, that's hardcore, man. Because I saw video of those dudes before they got beat up, and they looked much different after they got beat up. Like, you're like, oh, is that the same? Yeah, that's the same dude. They messed them up, So I don't know. I think that rushing to judgment isn't really a great way to go. But at the same time, we've got some pretty heinous crimes here, and a lot of the crimes are being committed because people know that they're not going to be impacted, right? It's in many ways, prisoners have so many rights in our prisons, and they don't in some of these other countries. And I don't know, maybe we need to get back to a little bit more of that, like they have in other countries.
Well, even so what happened to these guys? If they did have it shouldn't happen before they have their time in court.
Okay.
But obviously it did. And so if they have their time in court and it finds out that they were innocent, you can't take back what happened. I mean, just, so they should actually find out first if they're guilty before.
Yeah. I think we both agree on that. I think that's probably a reasonable way to look at it, at least from my perspective. Maybe I'm off base here, but I think people should not be convicted before they've had the opportunity to stand before, a jury of their peers, at least in our system.
Right. And then on the other side, if they did do this heinous crime, and what they got was the death sentence, I think they're getting the easy way out.
Yeah, I think that they should be actually made an example of, and then that way it's going to deter other people from doing something similar. And we don't have that in our country. We have, again, like I was saying, we have more rights for the prisoners and the people who have done wrong in this country than the people that are actually doing things the right way. And that's kind of an upside down system. And I don't know how we got to this point or where we go from here, but I don't know. I think that it'd be great if they could step things up a little bit. I know that they've got this thing in Russia called the Black Dolphin, and that's a prison that's no joke.
It's no joke.
Yeah, it's pretty medieval. But again, prison should be a punishment. It shouldn't be, oh, you get this and you get that, and you get your TV and you get your all this other stuff. We're encouraging it, but it's definitely an industry. A lot of people put a lot of bread on their tables, feed a lot of families working in the correctional facilities, and it's just a big money thing. It's an industry. So I don't know. I don't think they want to rehabilitate, but I think what I'd like to have people take away from tonight's episode, I think, it's just that it's very easy for us here to look at something and immediately make a judgment without making, or having all the facts. And it almost, again, seems like some kind of an American pastime to root for the downfall of the rich or the famous or even the infamous. And I wonder how many people were rooting against the Weaver family, not even knowing the full story and making a judgment based on very thin allegations. I would again go and encourage folks to watch those couple of videos if you're interested at all. I don't think it'll be something that you don't feel your time hasn't been wasted. They do a really good job of retelling the events, and it's also a very powerful interview by Sarah Weaver.
Yeah, it's definitely an image that the older kids, obviously not the baby, but the older kids that survived it, they're never going to forget that.
Yeah.
When Sarah was being interviewed, I mean, it was very hard for her to speak about her brother, and she's going to carry that the rest of her life.
Yeah. Yeah. She was saying that, they were best friends because that's all they had up there was themselves. They were living in a remote area. And so her brother, who was just 2 years her junior, they did everything together. They were best friends. And then to have that happen again, it's just really sad. But,
which I think is actually kind of a special bond that the mother and father kind of created for those kids.
Yeah.
Our kids kind of had the similar living on a ranch. They had each other to play with, and they're each other's best friends. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the way it should be. Because one of the things that we did is we didn't allow the kids to have TV. And when we did have TV, it was just what you could get with the rabbit ears. We never had cable for those reasons. It was like, go out and fucking play. You got stuff to do outside. You can go out and play. You don't need to sit here and watch TV. And so they had the only thing we had access to when we actually got TV was just the local, TV or whatever, And so, I don't know. I think that's something that when you do that, it develops that bond between siblings, and that's really important, I think.
I remember when we bought our first house, and we hadn't lived there very long, and I got up in the morning and went to the kitchen, and there was this little boy sitting on the couch, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, I don't have any blondes. Who are you? And he happened to be the next door neighbor kid that came over.
Oh yeah.
And he wanted to know what was for breakfast.
Yeah. They kind of liked hanging out for sure. But anything I see on mainstream media these days is potentially suspect. Yeah, I agree with that, London. I think that most everything out there, if people were just to take a moment and ask why it's being shown to you, or why you're seeing certain things, or why that message is so here's an example of what I'm talking about. This whole P. Diddy thing. Don't think that for a moment that they weren't trying to send a message, because when it was happening, they had helicopters from the media overhead. They had news footage happening while it was happening. So ask yourself the question, how did that happen? So, you have to just try to read between the lines on all of this sort of stuff, and don't just take it at face value. And if you're going to take anything at face value, it should be siding on the side of the citizen rather than the government. The government should be held to a much higher standard than the citizen, in my opinion. They have all the power. And for them to abuse power and then to use it in a way that goes against the freedom of the population, that's a real fucking problem, in my opinion. They've been entrusted to provide protection, and they're abusing it by fabricating things or making up shit on people. When they've got guns and they've got the law and they've got the media and they've got all these other things on their side, you have to ask yourself, why are those things happening, and who's putting it forth? What message are they trying to send? And so I think anything that I see from the media, legacy media, I'll call it, that's being done for a purpose and a reason. If anything is being shown to you, they want you to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anything that we know of what the CIA does, all their fucking like things that they've got this project this and project that and MK Ultra and all this other stuff. They wanted you to see that. They want you to know that stuff. What you don't know is what they don't want you to see. All the secret shit you don't know about is what they haven't shown you yet. It's all going on, right?
Yes. It's amazing how they hide that.
Yeah. Pretty interesting, guys. Pretty interesting. What am I doing here?
I don't know what you're doing, but
let me see here. I'm checking out let me check out, get
I
caught up in
love
the comments
Sylvia's
before we bail out on you guys. Let's see. Yeah. I don't know this Robert Lavoie cat. Same happened to Robert Lavoie incident in Oregon. I'll look that up. I'll look it up and see what that's all about. It's interesting to learn about certain things that, obviously you're not going to be told in school. These are things that they don't really want you to like they're not going to glorify things like this. And I don't think they should be glorifying it, but I don't think it should be hidden either. I think we should be well informed of what's happening in our country and by our government. Let's see here. I think the next big incident will have to do with the border. Wow. I don't know. I think maybe it could be something like cyber, something monetary potentially. I think that will be a really huge thing when that happens. People will freak. But the border, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the border right now. I don't know what you're referring to though. 3 stations, black and white, Sylvia Gibson says.
I can relate.
Yeah, I think my parents never had a black and white. I had a black and white TV, a little small one or whatever, but
I remember that TV.
That little tiny it was an AM FM radio. It was like a 6-inch screen and it had like a little antenna. That thing was badass.
I think you still had it when we met.
Probably. Yeah. 3 stations, black and white TV. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty incredible how things have technologically advanced when you think about it. And then I guess when you really start thinking about it, just kind of lets you know how many years have gone by.
I remember us trying out 2 different TVs when we were getting a color TV. And my dad really liked the stand that the black and white TV was in. Of course, it had the record player.
Yeah, hi-fi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what he took the black and white TV out and put the colored TV in that because he liked that stand.
Man, that's awesome. Yes, Gaines Girl says, ask yourself what else is happening that they need to distract you.
A lot.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know what else.
It seems
like
I
think a lot.
I think Americans are just easily distracted. I think we like being distracted to some extent. We like the bright, shiny objects because there's always those things out there.
I think it's easy to divert our attention.
Yeah.
Away so that they can do whatever they want on the other side.
Yeah. I actually have fun like just surfing TikTok. It's pretty fun for me. Like when I'm just looking to burn some brain cells and like check out for a minute, I'll just, just do this, thumb through, and you catch some pretty interesting stuff on there. Some of, most of it's kind of bullshit and a waste of your time, but sometimes there's some pretty like, wow, I didn't know that. And
I'm telling you.
And then when you find it, then you can do a little bit further investigation into things, which is pretty interesting. That's how I get down. Let's see here. Lavoie was an Arizona rancher shot and killed by the FBI on a standoff for 51 days. That's weird because like Waco was 51 days. So the FBI lied and agent was charged. I'm going to look that up. I saw another thing that was kind of, that might have been the thing I saw. I don't know, but I will look that up. Thanks, man. Interested just to know that sort of thing. And Dad had an antenna on the roof. You had to go outside to turn it for the best reception. Yeah. Yeah. And then they came out with those motors. You could get a motor and put on them. And then, you could do it from in the house and it would like point it at the right way or whatever. What's up, Elusive? How are you, man?
Because I never had that.
Well, we never had it either. I'm just saying that, that I know that they did have that. We had an antenna on our house. That's all you had was a big ass antenna thing up there. Yeah. Elusive, how are you this evening? It's not this evening where you're at, but good day. Good day, mate. Yes. Yeah. Right on. Yeah, you think the shenanigans are getting ready to start? I don't know. I think that there's going to be something that's going to happen prior to the election. I don't know if it's going to be big or small, but something's going to happen. And I'm just kind of waiting with anticipation because I know something's going to go down.
Oh, I think you can bank on that.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to have to be like a riot, a 3-month riot like it was last time. They did that just for Trump. They're not going to have things so fucked up this time because Biden's in there and they don't want it to be like, chaos maybe. Or whatever. But they managed to do that with that whole Black Lives Matter thing and, burning down cities for 3 months. That was kind of on Trump's watch. So I don't think they're going to do something like that, but something sunny day. Yeah. Sunny day here too, man. It's really nice. And it's kind of weird doing these lives when it's not even dark out yet, I mean, there's still daylight here. Yeah, good bit of daylight too. Sun's down, but we still got time to go out and do things. But yeah, really tall antenna. We did have the motor that turned the antenna. Yeah, it was a thing. I don't think we ever had it, but I remember like a friend of mine or something, he had that at his house. It was this thing that sat on the thing and you could move the antenna. Yeah. Climate related lockdowns. I don't know, man. I don't think the lockdowns thing are going to fucking work this time. People are going to be not into that. I don't know about you, but I ain't locking down nowhere, and they did that before and people were like, with this whole COVID thing, they bought into it. But, even the people that are still like wearing masks are probably not going to lock down. Cause I mean, that's like ridiculous. That's not happening in my opinion. I could be wrong. Yeah.
You don't think so? You don't think with the illegals coming over that there's not going to be some disease or something that we've eradicated that now all of a sudden, boom, is back and everybody's got smallpox or... Well,
I mean, it could actually be legit typhoid. This time. That's the problem because they just let all these people in and they haven't screened anybody's health. They're not concerned about, people's health as it relates to all of these sort of viruses and things. They haven't screened any of these people. So I think it could easily be an actually legit type of a thing. I mean, you got people from all over the world just pouring over here. So whatever, I don't know. Peaceful protests. Yeah, they're not, they're lying, I think. Now it's TB. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think they're going to have a hard time pushing the virus thing again so soon. Maybe they'll have some success with it or whatever. I mean, and the problem is that I think a lot of people who, like myself, would not be willing to believe it, even if it was true, because they are such liars and they've been so dishonest. They've lost the trust of the people, in my opinion. They've lost my trust. I can speak for myself, but when you lie repeatedly and you're caught lying, how is a person supposed to respond to that? Are we supposed to just keep, going along? Yeah, I'm going to pay my 60%, of all my wages and just keep being a good citizen and just doing everything you tell me to do because, you're the authorities when they fucking lie constantly. And then you're not supposed to realize that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just the angry guy. You know?
I don't know.
I don't know. Let's see here. Yeah. Cindy says they are trying to provoke a response that would give them an excuse to usurp what rights we have left for our own protection. I think that will be a part of the play at some point.
Mhm.
When that happens, I don't think that's going to happen in an election year. They're going to do something that's, going to advantage themselves. I don't think that usurping more of our rights in an election year is really going to make things to their advantage unless they just feel so confident in their ability to manipulate the results. I think they feel very confident in that right now, because why would they run somebody like Joe Biden, who's fucking clearly out of his mind and not fit for the job and is just a figurehead puppet? I don't know. I think they feel very confident in how the results are going to turn out. So that's why I'm sticking to my guns and saying that, poor MAGA, poor Trump. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't know. I'm still on the I'm still on the line for that, because I don't know.
Well, I will
I
say
don't know if
this.
He's got something up his sleeve.
I will say this. He's going to get the most votes. Guarantee you. 100% he will get the most votes. What the outcome of the election will be, that's up to however things play out.
Back to Sylvia with the lies. Once you lie, you lose credibility. Not only do you lose credibility, but you forget which lie you told to who.
Yeah.
And you really lose credibility.
Yeah, that's my opinion, Sylvia. That's the way I feel about it, and I think that only makes you I guess a person who's willing to learn from past mistakes, because if you believe something and that's your belief, and then your belief is proven to be wrong, how many times do you have to be proven wrong for you to actually learn? So I just feel that way currently. Maybe things will change. I don't know. Maybe they'll change. Maybe things will just magically get better as far as the relationship between the government and the people.
That is a pipe dream.
Yeah, I wish it weren't a pipe dream. I wish it were actually the case, which we had representation that would listen to the things that we said. It's interesting, the guy that is in our district, right? And neither of us really care much for the dude. And he runs a sign, his name's Doug LaMalfa, Republican. And, we're in a Republican county. It's pretty solidly red. And I don't know, he's been in his third or fourth term, probably more than that, 4 terms, 5 terms maybe. But he's been the guy, our Congress clown in Washington for at least that amount of terms. And I think he was probably a little bit better when he first started, but that's the problem with all of this, is you wind up getting corrupted. And so he wears a little, on his thing, it says, he's got a little cowboy hat that says, "I'm one of you," or some bullshit like that, right? One of us or something.
Not even close.
Yeah. Well, he voted against, he voted on this omnibus bill thing that they just passed, which was to send funds to Ukraine and to send more funding for the border and all the illegals and all this shit. And he voted for that. And here he is, in a Republican district, but I guess he feels as though his seat is safe. So that's why he's probably decided, hey, I'm going to vote for this bill because it's in the interest of the people. And it's just an interesting thing, man, when you start really paying attention to what these people are doing and then realize, they're just lying to you. And you look at these places that are conservative, right? places like Kentucky and South Carolina. And yet you've got these fucking people in there like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, who you can't get rid of. They're like a cancer, that are just doing whatever the hell they want to do. Passing all this shit, sending money elsewhere. How's that good for you in Kentucky? How's that good for you in South Carolina or Tennessee or wherever else you're from? It's an interesting thing, man. These people get entrenched and they're just there. They're just part of the system and the machine. I don't know how we deal with that, guys, as a people.
Well, I agree with London. Never happened, but I agree with you.
What's that? What'd she say?
Limited terms.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? Right? Term limits. Yeah. Well, but see, that's never going to happen because they're the ones who make the laws. So how is that going to change ever? It's never going to change. You got these people are just a cancer. The Congress is less popular than any single political figure. You ask people, oh, what's the approval rating of Congress? And it's like single digits all the time. It's because they can't get shit done that's good for the American people. All they can do is get shit done for them and their constituents and or not constituents, but their donors and all the people that are funding their corruption. It's a sad thing, man. I don't know. I'm disillusioned, guys. Can you hear it in my voice?
Thanks a lot. I'm going to listen to him all night now.
No, I'm going to just chill out and I'm just going to go relax.
No, you're not.
I'm going to go.
It's not your nature.
Yeah. Okay. Man, got me wound up here. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight and being a part of the live stream. And we're just here throwing out some ideas and having a conversation and sharing some thoughts with you guys. And I hope that everybody is going to be moving forward on their projects and their, all the things you got going on your homesteads and in your lives and making yourself better. Because again, it is up to us to identify what those things are and just keep ticking away on them. And yeah.
Did you have another video that you were going to play?
No, I wasn't going to play that one. That was on the Black Dolphin. And I put it up there. I was going to possibly play it, but it's just it's a Russian prison. And if you guys, they don't mess around, man, in Russia. And maybe that's why when Tucker Carlson went there, he's walking around and he's going, man, this place is pretty nice. It's not all graffitied up and there's not a bunch of fucking bums around. It's not a scary thing to go on the subway, and that's maybe speaks to the fact that they don't live in a free society where you can just do whatever the hell you want with no consequence. They have rules. And if you get out of line, sometimes you might disappear. And I'm not saying I advocate that sort of thing. I'm not in favor of re-education camps and torture and all this sort of stuff. But I've said it before, there has to be some kind of a happy medium. And I don't know, maybe it starts with finding a way to restore what our founders thought. And I think, again, that's probably a pipe dream because how things have evolved, it's kind of out of our control because they're going to just do whatever they want. But I don't know. There has to be a happy medium to some of this. There has to be discipline,
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate it. Guys. And again, thank you. And we will be back next week with something for you to hear us ramble on about. It's been kind of a rambly evening, I guess. Yeah, very well, guys. We're gonna bounce, and remember, you can go on and check out what we got going on our website. And were you gonna say something?
I was going to say that maybe next time when we do this, we should do it like a buffet. Have our dinner here.
Man, you want to see people tuning out. watching me eat a plate of food. And I don't want to see that. Right on. Hey guys, well, we're going to bounce and hope you guys have a great week. Thanks again for joining us, and we will catch you next time.
Have a great evening. Thanks for
Yeah, we'll see you guys.